takes it to a whole new level.
It's got absolutely everything. Jumping, sliding, crashing.
You got dirt, tarmac, gravel.
Cars are flying through the air. There's a lot of rubbing in racing. We take it a step further.
With 3 of 10 rounds contested, the 2014 Red Bull Global RallyCross season continues.
Patrick Sandell is going to be your winner of Volkswagen RallyCross DC.
Coming off a breakthrough victory in round 3, Patrick Sandell is eager to continue his winning ways.
It was my first win in RallyCross. I was super excited for that. I was really on it the whole weekend, so that's the plan for this one as well.
As round 4 began, the points race had never been tighter between Brazilian star Nelson Piquet Jr. and 2-time winner Scott Speed.
I think we just stick to our game plan, do our thing, worry about us. Then, you know, we gotta control our own destiny.
You know, we're just doing what's necessary just to be up front every weekend. This weekend, we're pretty sure we're gonna get the lead of the championship.
The drivers are ready. The engines are hot. The starting grid is set. This is Volkswagen RallyCross New York. New York has played host to some of the world's most famous sporting events over the years, and today, for the first time in the shadow of the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum, Red Bull Global RallyCross comes to town to make its mark on the Big Apple. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Till, along with Tommy Kendall. We're approaching the halfway part of the season, and if you've struggled as a team or a driver up to this point, it's time to get back in that championship hunt. To some extent, it's been a season of haves and have-nots, and to illustrate that, look no further than Volkswagen Andretti RallyCross, where the haves, Scott Speed. He has 2 victories on the season. The have-nots, Tanner Faust. Tommy, he doesn't have a win in a main event so far this year.
He doesn't. I know what it's like when you have competitive teammates going at it. The pressure builds, and we saw evidence of that in the heat races. Scott Speed, cool on the outside, but watch how bad he wants to win. The only guy was able to seize the lead from the outside and does it. He was coming across whether there were cars there or not. Look at the big bicycle car up on the curb. And if you talk to the guys, they're saying, yeah, everything's cool, no tension between teammates, but I know how it is. It's a zero-sum game. And look at that car up in the air, really on full kill mode this weekend. So, and this affected the points, which we'll see in a little bit. Actually took a point away from Scott Speed, tied the championship up, but they worked together to a point, but he needs to get a win on the board.
Well, and obviously, Tanner Faust, Scott Speed, not the only drivers involved in the championship. You mentioned it. Nelson Piquet came into the weekend only 1 point behind, but Tanner Faust, with that victory, took a point away. Nelson Piquet, Scott Speed now tied. In fact, there are a handful of drivers still have a very good shot at this championship, but to win it, you're going to have to score good points every weekend, and this weekend, you're going to have to tackle a very challenging racetrack here in New York.
It is a tough course, and New York is known for its energy, and the track reflects that. Look at right in the shadow of Veterans Memorial Coliseum, Volkswagen RallyCross New York. And there's the start box. Before we get to these series right-handers, you got a land rush start, and we saw how it gets narrow in a hurry with Scott Speed. 1, 2, and 3 look like separate corners, but drive like one huge, long right-hander. Then you get to the lone, tight hairpin left-hander, leading you into the dirt section and this big tabletop jump. Big air here, and some guys are flying pretty flat, but a couple guys doing some pretty good endos. And then they got to get it woed down for turn 5. Critical corners that leads into that whole series of right-handers. But then you also have the Joker, which is on the inside of turn 5. Now, the Joker is something that you can take once, but only once. And the drivers select when they want to employ that to best effect, but it's your best chance to get by a competitor. And now we're going to see the 3D representation of this, and Tanner Faust is going to talk us around on the GoPro track preview.
Hey, this is Tanner Faust. We're out here at the Volkswagen New York RallyCross round, and this is the top.
Cut, not again.
Oh, yeah. This is the
Take 2.
This is the GoPro course preview. All right, we'll start off on the line here.
Really clean into turn 2 as you come into turn 3. Got to sweep in, get a good exit into turn all the way down to second gear before you come into the hairpin. This is the only right-hand corner on the whole course. So it's really about time management. Got to find a good place to jump. The regular track is on the outside. If you come onto the front straightaway, come come into the very last corner, a very clean exit. The front system, and that is a single lap of New York RallyCross.
Time for me to go to work. Thanks for coming out.
Wow, what great shots from Tanner Faust. The cars lined up and getting ready to go. So now let's go to the third member of our broadcast team, even closer to the action than we are. Here's Kristen Kinney.
Gentlemen, I have the best seat in the house. Behind me, you can feel the exhilaration from these engines. 600 horsepower in each engine. It's exciting, but it's all about the start, and that's what makes this series so unique. These cars go 0 to 60 in sub 2 seconds. It's fast, and it will come down to this start. Whoever takes the start today will most likely finish on top. We'll see.
So important to get that whole shot. Drivers lined up and ready to go. 2 rows of 3. Here's a look at your Royal Purple starting grid. Nelson Piquet Jr. has that preferred position, but Ken Block, he's a great starter right there in the middle.
Yeah, he's been flawless. Nobody's been able to beat him into the first corner yet, and we're going to see if that streak continues.
Move back to row 2. Steve Arpin on the inside. He'll try to slot up there and get between drivers. Johnny Weeman had a shock. He lost a shock in one of the heat races. That set him back, not what he wants. Austin Dine had a penalty in one of the heat races yesterday, so he's on the back row. He wants to move further forward. What it means is it's going to be exciting. You ride on board with Mr. Excitement, Ken Block.
And if you look at a guy who really has a great life, Ken Block wins, you know. He has fun at everything he does, founded a very successful company, and now he just gets go racing and does it to good effect.
The standing start. Drivers getting ready for their launch sequence. They'll bring up the RPMs to the desired level, hold the handbrake, and when the lights go green, we're racing, and we are in New York. Welcome, New York, to Red Bull Global RallyCross.
Really close.
Oh, man, contact already.
Block was not clear, but he was coming anyways, and PK was able to, or had to yield with that kind of commitment from Ken Block. And we saw Ken Block defend a little bit in the heat races. He's doing it again already.
No points on the line here in the heats today, but what is on the line? Starting positions for the main event. You want that transfer spot. You don't want to have to run the last chance qualifier. Already Ken Block took the Joker lane on the inside. So did Johnny Weeman. PK, Steve Arpin Jr., or Steve Arpin take the outside line.
And that is critical for Arpin. He neutralized, Weeman took the Joker but did not get around him. So Arpin still has that in his quiver. The leaders every heat race have taken the Joker lap. Now we'll see if PK, what they'll try to do, if you haven't used your Joker, you'll try to close right up on the back of that car in front of you and then use the Joker to get around.
Give you a 3 to 4 car length advantage, and you can tell at home whether they've taken the Joker or not. Look at the scoring strip in the top of the screen. That little Joker emblem, if it's illuminated, it means they've already used that one Joker lap, and a problem for Bucky Lasek. He's pulled off down in turn 1.
And a red flag. Got the car rolling again.
Tell if he had nudged into the tire wall or had some type of a problem. Is the right front down? No, it looks okay, but Lasek with some type of a problem, and that brings a stoppage on the racetrack. So they'll revert to that last full lap of scoring and make sure that everybody's in the same order. I don't think it's going to change from the last lap or 2.
And red flags and other type of racing are usually associated with a serious incident, but because these heats are so short, they don't put out a safety car. They just freeze everyone, do whatever they need to do, and then they get back to racing.
2 laps of 6 in the books right now, and it's Ken Block that had the lead. Nelson Piquet Jr., we said no points, but it's starting positions, which are important. Why are they important? Take a look at the start here.
They're pretty much dead even. A little bit of a nose from Ken Block. Let him come across PK. A little bit of contact, but you see how hard he's fighting to get to the inside because until he can close off that gap, a guy can come, it's too inviting to slice up the inside. Now, what's key here, Block has used the Joker, PK is not. The gap that Block had built now goes away. So very good chance, a huge opportunity for Nelson Piquet Jr. to try to use the Joker to get in front of him.
That's a really good point. Now it's basically starting over again. The competition is right up there on your bumper. They'll get this sorted out. Get the red flag sorted out. We'll get the cars lined back up, and we'll go racing once again from here in New York. It's Red Bull Global RallyCross from right here in New York. Don't miss a lap of it. We'll be right back on NBC. Red flag out here, and Bucky Lassick is the one who brought out that red flag. He just runs into his motorhome. The crew will go to work on the car. He will not do the automatic transfer. He'll have to run the last chance qualifier. What that means is we're going to re-rack him and do it all over again. So Nelson Piquet Jr., he learned a lesson on that last start.
He did. He knows he's going to have to get further than, I mean, he was only a bumper behind, but Ken Block charged down the inside. Let's see if he can get as good a start this time and muscle Piquet out of the way.
Launch sequence being initiated. They'll wait for the green lights, and then they will go. And here we go, getting ready. Waiting. There's the green, and we're off. Piquet Jr. in his red Ford to the inside. Ken Block in that black and blue. Piquet side by side with Block this time. And it's going to be tough down in turn 2, still side by side.
And look at Piquet. We're starting to run him out of room. Now, they have, because it was a complete restart, they all have a joker now. So let's see if, true to form, if Piquet takes it on the first lap like everybody else has. He's on the inside there. A little bit harder to get it slowed down. Oh, wow. So the second and third place took it more as a defensive move, not to leapfrog, but to try to keep their spot in the order.
It's all how you play it. Ken Block playing the inside across the start-finish line to complete lap 1, but it's Nelson Piquet Jr. He learned his lesson on the first start. He leads here in start number 2, and this is exactly what he wanted to see. Nothing in front of him. Now, all of these drivers have spotters. They're keeping him abreast of when they've taken the joker, when the competition has, and where their competition is on the track.
And these guys up front, again, being a little bit more defensive. They're in transfer spots, and so they're saying, okay, let's, even though I'm going to settle for third here, I'm still trying to get around them on track, but the easy joker, they decided to play it at the same time. Now you see this interminable, basically it's a 3 or 4 rights in a row, but it plays like one huge long one, which could come into play before the end of the weekend with tire wear. Really hard on that left front tire.
Each team gets 3 sets of the Yokohama tire, so they've got to manage their tires both on track and off and play strategically.
And look at Steve Arpin.
Oh, side by side.
Gets 2 cars.
Almost had Ken Block. Arpin now into the transfer spot, that third and final transfer spot that will send you directly to the final. Everybody else will have to run the last chance qualifier.
He is hooked up. He made up all that joker ground before he used his joker close right now. That's textbook how you want to play that.
Well, we know that they made some changes to his Ford Fiesta before the warm-up. They had changed the suspension settings a little bit, trying to find more grip, and he had had some differential problems as well. Seems to be paying off, Tommy.
They actually went to a differential, which it wasn't what they wanted. It's a lot more lock, and he said he's really had to change his driving style to cope with it, but he's doing a great job. Steve Arpin had never seen or sat in a car before his first race in Brazil a year ago. Comes from a dirt track NASCAR type background and loves this global rallycross.
So does Nelson Piquet Jr., and he loves being out in front right now, looking for another heat race win. Lap 5 being worked right now off 6. Piquet Jr. up in front, followed by Ken Block, then Steve Arpin. White flag is out, and right now the top 3. You've got Piquet Jr., Block, and Arpin. They will transfer if it finishes this way, but you never know. Anything can happen in Red Bull Global Rallycross. We still have half a lap to go, and Johnny Weeman right there on the back of the bumper of Steve Arpin in his Red Bull Ford Fiesta. He wants a transfer spot, really beginning to put the pressure on, but time running out. To the line, Nelson Piquet Jr., checkered flag waves. Piquet wins heat number 1 here in New York, and that will be a transfer spot and a great starting position for Piquet Jr. in the final. Then Ken Block, then Steve Arpin with that final transfer spot.
He got my attention when he basically said, we're pretty sure we're going to leave this weekend with a points race, unless he knows something I don't. Just showing the kind of confidence, and he's backing it up with a win in this heat.
I talked to Nelson Piquet Jr. the other day, and he's a real student of the sport. He has learned it and learned it well. This is Ken Block at the start, the second start. Piquet Jr. just shoved it in there. Wasn't about to let him have the inside.
Reaction time.
Take a look at Steve Arpin, his move into third. He almost gets to second. Great action from Red Bull Global Rallycross, New York. Stay with us. We'll be back for more right after this. Back in New York with Red Bull Global Rallycross, heat number 1 in the books, and this is the 3 that will transfer. Nelson Piquet Jr., Ken Block, Steve Arpin. So important to get that transfer spot into the final and not have to run the last chance qualifier. Nelson Piquet Jr., he won heat number 1, and he is with Kristen.
Nelson, what did you learn from the restart to get past Ken Block?
Well, I had a little issue when the gear change in the first starts, and hopefully, well, I didn't do the mistake in the second one again, so we got a better start. Yeah, for sure. It meant a lot because start is everything in one of these races, so we have to work harder. We still kind of have some improvement during the race, so we need some time now to work in the car.
Definitely the start is everything out here today. Guys?
Kristen, we've heard that from so many drivers, and in fact, as you look at the grid starting to line up for heat number 2, Tanner Faust, one of the best starters in the business. He's going to have a good shot there as we go green. He starts right alongside his teammate.
And I actually call that highlight backwards. I said it was Scott Speed that made the bold move in the heat race and did the bicycle. It was actually Tanner Faust feeling the heat, responded to the pressure, the inter-team rivalry, and now he's got that preferred inside spot.
Patrick Sandell outside the front row. He won the last round at Washington. Sverre Iseksen always spectacular alongside Reese Millen and Millen's teammate Emma Gilmore, and their Hyundai is improving, but still a little bit behind in the development curve.
And I chuckle when you say Sverre Iseksen because he is so much fun to watch. Definitely a crowd favorite. Bring the European style where he really tail out. And Tanner Faust, this is the view from inside that Rockstar Volkswagen.
And he is a rock star when it comes to the starts. We've seen it throughout the heat races on board with Scott Speed. Teammates side by side. And Tommy, you said it earlier, there's no one you would rather beat. No one that's more important to beat than your teammate. The start, absolutely critical. Tanner Faust with another great jump. Scott Speed with a problem, drops to the back. Faust leads into one. Iseksen right behind him in his Subaru.
Speed all the way to last place.
Some type of a hesitation on the start. Don't know if the engine just bogged down in his Volkswagen Polo, but right now, his Volkswagen teammate, and now a little pushing and shoving. Emma Gilmore into the side of Patrick Sandell.
And look at Speed, okay, trying to make a move on at least one or two cars before he uses his Joker. So these heats are not very low, and he's up alongside. So he's going from 6th to 5th.
On board with Scott Speed, he has to get to the top 3 to get a transfer spot automatically.
Our most recent winner, Sandell in front of him.
It's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. He's gotten past Emma Gilmore. Gilmore looks to have slowed a little bit. Speed now has his sights set just in front, trying to pick up every position that he can.
I'm impressed with his patience. He's working by. He's really, look how much quick he's able to make down here, not around here, not able to get up alongside. Look at that tighter run, just really tidy and smooth. Made up 2 spots on track. If he can close the gap up to that car in front of him, Reese Millen, before using his Joker, I mean, he has, pardon the pun, but he has shown incredible speed this weekend. Clearly the fastest car.
Absolutely. Tanner Faust, Sverre Iseksen, Reese Millen, they've all used their Joker, and there is Tanner Faust. Talk about a guy who's had a bad season. He's a 2-time champion in this discipline, and this year has just been dreadful. Asked him about it earlier in the weekend. He said, I would have never expected it, not in a million years. And what's frustrating, his teammate has run so well. On board with Scott Speed, he needs to get past.
He's closed that gap. I fully expect him to take the Joker this lap.
And this would be the time to do it. Up and over the jump. Look for Millen to go wide.
He wants to do it the hard way. And this is proving a point. He's going to try to pass him under green on track.
He's running out of time. Millen very wide there at the start-finish line. Can Scott Speed get by on track without having to use the Joker lane? Looks to the inside here. Millen will shut the door, and they make contact. Millen slides wide. Scott Speed's done it. He's moved into position 3. That'll give a transfer if he can hold it.
That was Scott Speed wanting to prove a point. Who's the quick car here? Up into a transfer spot without using his Joker.
You don't get to bank him either, so there's really no reason not to use it unless our timing and scoring is wrong. It shows that he hasn't used it. Scott Speed up into 3rd without using the Joker. There's the leader. Tanner Faust in his Rockstar Ford, or Volkswagen, I should say. And it's one of those deals where Tanner Faust, he wants to make a point and show that he is a contender. Such a bad season, but a victory here will help heal that.
Speed did duck into the Joker. Is he going to get second?
Did he think he had that in hand? Look at this. He closes right up on the back of Sverre Iseksen, but does not get it done. But Tanner Faust does. He takes the victory, and that is important. He's had a couple of heat race victories so far this season, but nothing in a main event. Tanner Faust on a mission.
And even though he got back into a transfer spot with that bad start and only getting to third, Scott Speed will not be on the front row of the final. Not happy about that.
No, always a competitor. Look at the start and Speed straight to the back.
You get to see how fast the cars are there, because when a car has a problem, they just, everyone went around them in no time.
When they all move together, it's kind of hard to get an idea. Here's a look at Scott Speed inside of Reese Millen and just muscles him out of the way.
And that's why this type of racing is so appealing. They let you rub.
It's Red Bull Global Rallycross, and there's plenty more coming your way.
DC was a very difficult weekend. We had some engine issues. The team actually made a bearing out of the back of a hammer. I don't know how that works either. But to come in and get a 5th and 6th position after a very, very difficult team effort was amazing, but still not the top points. This weekend, I have to crush. Practice is showing the speed of the VW Polo Rs, but with the slow start to the championship that I had, the pressure's on me specifically to really push.
Next, from beautiful Lake Tahoe, celebrities from stage, screen, and sports compete at the American Century Championship. It's coming up next on NBC. But here in New York, Red Bull Global Rallycross, here is the start. A replay of it, and you can see Tanner Faust just blast off the line. Who drops to the back? Scott Speed.
The have-and-have-not roles reversed. Tanner Faust, everything going his way this weekend, and Scott Speed had to do it the hard way. Passed 3 cars on track. It's the last one, muscling by Reese Millen for that transfer spot.
And it is so important because the top 3, you just said it, Tommy, the top 3 transfer directly to the final, and even though he goes there, he is not a happy man.
No, and watch this. I mean, he's what it cost him is it cost him a spot on the front row, which we've seen how vital the starts are. With the speed he's showing and being able to get around, those are good cars he was passing. But whether he can pass the guys that are starting on the front row is another thing. So getting some reports of a clutch problem they're looking into. Obviously, once he was rolling, the car was fine.
And this is how they'll build the grid. We already have 6 confirmed for the final. That's how they'll line up. Let's check back down in victory lane with Kristen.
Tanner, it looked like you certainly had something to prove out there. How hungry are you to get back to the top?
I don't just want it, I need it. But wanting it sometimes a little more powerful. Yeah, so it's, I'm very hungry, and Polo R is running great. So as long as I can keep getting good starts and lay down good lap times. The guys worked overnight to fix some issues from yesterday, so I'm feeling really, really good about it.
How does it feel to beat your teammate, Scott Speed, out there?
He's my teammate, and we run the same car, but once the lights kind of go on, it's just another car with 4 wheels on the track that you just have to be ahead of. So, yeah, it feels good, but it just as good as anybody. So it's a really tough battle on this track. It's basically 2 turns, 1 long right-hander and a hairpin left. And keeping the tires on the wheels for that whole time, as I found out in warm-up this morning, is difficult. So just have to keep fighting and save the car at the same time.
Tanner Faust heading to the final. Let's send it back to the booth.
Every heat race win he gets is good for his confidence. He went to Finland after the Washington, D.C. round and won World Rallycross over there. So that helps him as you look at the Royal Purple starting grid. Johnny Weeman, this is for the last chance qualifier. 6 cars, the top 4 go. So you've got to get there. Reese Millen on the front row as well as Austin Dine.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. No one's going to give an inch. You got a bunch of hard racers here. A number of them have made every final. Sandell, last race winner, is going to have to go through the LCQ. And 2 of them will not make it.
Bucky Lassick, he had a problem. He had contact in heat in number 1 today and did not finish that. Emma Gilmore, she's looking to improve. That team got to do some testing after Washington, D.C., and now she's running her own setup instead of that of Reese Millen's. Speaking of Reese Millen, there he is. Gilmore with not a lot of experience testing and being able to learn what you need, what you want in your car is critical. Millen getting ready for the start on board with Patrick Sandell. Getting ready to get in that launch sequence, and you bring the revs up, the RPM to where you want it, where your engine's going to work the best. Hold that brake, put it in first gear, and wait for the lights.
So you can bring the revs up. You can actually set it so you can floor the throttle, and it won't let the revs go above a certain amount. You'll test to figure out what's the optimal, what your car wants.
Standing start, so critical. The drivers have talked about it. We've talked about it. You want to be that first car to the apex of turn 1. Red lights will go off in 3 to 5 25 seconds. Green lights come on. We're racing in the last chance qualifier, and a poor start from Millen. That is huge. He needs to make up 2 positions to get into the final. And you can tell, you said it, desperate times call for desperate measures. It is tight up front. Emma Gilmore got a great start, but then slides out wide. Now big contact in her Hyundai Veloster.
In that, I call that Shamazel, you have Reese Millen actually made up 2 spots. Goes through the Joker, following his teammate.
Sliding wide, trying to move forward. He takes the Joker. Emma Gilmore a little wide. Millen's going to slide underneath, take the spot from his teammate. He's moving
his
forward.
teammate.
Yep.
But, like I said, now's the time to go. And they're both in transfer spots. But a couple of those cars behind them still have Joker.
He's in 4th. He's in the transfer spot. But right in front of Reese Millen, Austin Dine has not taken the Joker yet. So he still has that in hand. And you only have 4 laps to get it done. So you got to move forward and you got to get there quickly.
Sandell making a bid for 4th.
Doesn't make a bid. He gets the purchase completed. He's past Reese Millen. Millen holding on to 4th. He had gotten as high as 3rd, now back to 4th. And it is going to be ugly these last lap and a half to get those transfer spots done. Millen sideways over the jump, trying to put the pressure on Sandell just in front.
See Austin Dine just taking his Joker lap that time to try to close up on the back of the leader.
You don't risk too much here. You're Millen. You know you've got the transfer done. Don't throw it away by getting involved in contact that's going to get you to lose a position. But you can't hold back too much because your teammate Emma Gilmore and her Hyundai Veloster right behind it. She's rubbing on the bumper of Reese Millen.
You've got these are extra laps on their tires, but you don't really have a choice. You can't just baby it. So Reese would feel a lot more comfortable if he can build a gap.
Checker flag is out. Sandell, Reese Millen, they'll take the final transfer spots and go to the final, but that was hard fought. And as we said, 6 cars, 4 transfer, and you get 4 laps to get it done. And Reese Millen, just a poor start there. We saw him drop back. He definitely had his work cut out for him.
Like Scott Speed, he made it hard on himself, but both drivers made it into the final. Here are your final 10. This is the grid.
And I'm looking forward to the final. It is going to be absolutely awesome. Red Bull Global Rallycross, Volkswagen Rallycross New York, the top 10. And when you think about the championship on the line, you look back, Scott Speed, who came in here tied with Nelson Piquet Jr. Speed back in 6th. That puts him on the 2nd row, and Nelson Piquet Jr. is going to be starting essentially from the pole position, and that is huge. This is what Red Bull Global Rallycross is all about. Yeah, a little bit of contact. We talk about hard fought. Get a look at it right there. Red Bull Global Rallycross from New York. The final coming your way right here on NBC. Make sure you stay with us. Back in New York for Red Bull Global Rallycross. There's some of the signage around the racetrack. Welcome Nash FM to the GRC family. It's America's country station, Nash FM. Been listening to it since I've been here in New York, and I know plenty of the fans sitting around the stands doing the same thing. Well, guess what? Red Bull Global Rallycross also lights in action here this weekend. Fight all season long has been between Mitchell DeYoung and Kevin Erickson, teammates at Oldsburg MSE, and it was Kevin Erickson with the jump at the start. And there's a look at Pedro Piquet, the yellow and black car right behind. All these cars identical. It's a great driver development tool, and then a broken axle for Jeff Sykes as he pulls off to the side, but Kevin Erickson really never pressured.
And Erickson finally breaking DeYoung's perfect streak. DeYoung has won every heat and every final so far this year, but the points tighten up.
Yeah, Kevin Erickson had been finishing 2nd, so he goes from bridesmaid to being the bride. He takes the victory and still close in the championship, but Mitchell DeYoung very strong. These 2 guys returning this year to the Light Series, and that experience paying off well. As you see the results, Kevin Erickson, Mitchell DeYoung, Pedro Piquet in his debut, and then Oliver Erickson, the younger brother of Kevin, there in 4th, and looking on down through the rest of the field, Jeff Sykes with that broken axle being shown back in 7th. Good stuff. I mean, it's exciting here for the fans. It'll be exciting for the rest of the season. We're Charlotte next, Daytona, a doubleheader in LA, Seattle, and ending it in Vegas, right where it should end.
And I'm just announcing, but the intensity just builds every step of the weekend. It's a truly cumulative weekend where everything builds on the last.
You talk about building. Well, guess what? The grid has been built, and the final is set. Red Bull Global Rallycross, the final from New York. It's up next. The high-speed, action-packed racing of Red Bull Global Rallycross. Well, it continues. Next stop, Charlotte, and it's right here Saturday at 2 Eastern, right here on NBC. Now it's time for a quick AutoZone quick fix moment. Let's talk about tires really quickly here, Tommy. These Yokohama racing slicks, yes, racing slicks, include running on this dirt. You've got to conserve them in these 10 laps.
When you think about it, 10 laps is going to take 5 minutes, 300 seconds. How hard can that be? About 20 of every 30 seconds is just grinding on that left front tire. And we heard Tanner Faust say that's going to be a factor in the race. You cannot just charge the whole time, but you can't afford not to charge because of the way this series, the intensity of it. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Now that, and you're trying to put 600 horsepower to the ground, and all 4 wheels have drive. So these tires absolutely being punished. But Yokohama, what a great job they did. They built a tire. They said we built a 15-minute tire. That's what these guys have. That's what they're going to have to deal with. That's what they have to conserve.
Well, and they only get 12 for the whole weekend. So all the practice, the heats, the qualifying, if you have to do the last chance qualifier, you have to decide how you're going to use those 3 sets of tires.
It's part of the strategy. It's just like using the Joker lane, and right now the car is beginning to line up. There's a look at the Royal Purple grid. Nelson Piquet Jr. on the pole. Tanner Faust, so good at starts. Sverre Isaacson outside. Faust going to be right there in the middle in his Volkswagen. Look for him to make that big jump, and that is row number 1, but they've got plenty of competition back in row number 2.
The very first heat of the weekend, Tanner Faust got squeezed in that center spot. Now we go to row 2. Some heavyweights here too. Ben Block, Scott Speed, Steve Arpin needing to make something happen if they want to come away with a W here.
Arpin continues to improve, but I'm going to have my eyes on Scott Speed. He did not get that good start. He wants to make amends. In row 3, Johnny Wieman, he had a shock problem earlier in the weekend. Austin died. He fights hard. We've seen that throughout the last chance qualifier. Patrick Sandell, winner last time. You go through this list in the talent, it's deep. It's very deep.
And Reese Millen, 10th. There's no dead wood in this final. Everyone is a winner, champion in their own right. And this is like the racing version of skydiving. It doesn't last very long, but the intensity and the adrenaline is off the chart.
30-second board is up, and this is not a last chance qualifier. This doesn't move you on anywhere. This moves you up in the championship. It is all or nothing on board with Sverre Isaacson. Every one of these 10 drivers looking for the win. 10 drivers, 10 laps of Red Bull Global Rallycross from right here in New York. It's about to get underway, and it is going to be intense. There's a look at Scott Speed, was so upset when he got the transfer, not because he got the transfer, but the way it came about, that poor start that he had. He wants to make amends for that. Quickest driver here this weekend. He was the #1 qualifier, but has struggled a little bit. Nelson Piquet Jr. tied with Scott Speed in the championship. He's got the pole. 10-second board is up, and we're going to look for the red starting lights. They'll go red, then they'll go off, and 3 to 5 seconds later, the green lights will come on, and we will be racing in the final. Red lights starting to illuminate across the top. Wait for them to go out. Launch sequence has been initiated in the cars, and we are racing. That was a quick green light, and Tanner Faust did not get the start that he is known for, but he is being pushed around. It is intense up front.
Around. That's Ken Block. They were about 4 wide.
You don't see Block go around very often. He has re-entered the fray, but the rest of the field battling hard. Man, it is like a boxing match now. Steve Arpin with a problem.
Arpin into Speed, gets turned around to the inside, goes into the barrier. If he can't get into reverse, he can stop this. Cars piling into the Joker up front.
Absolutely intense. Sverre Isaacson takes over the point. Up front it is Subaru. Tanner Faust making amends for a poor start. Back up to second. Scott Speed trying to work his way through in his 7-Up Volkswagen. Red flag is out. Arpin with a problem in the hairpin brings out the red. Wow.
Look,
Oh, and after the car slowing down.
Under red. What?
Guys, got to be paying attention there, and it'll be potential suspension damage. As you see Reese Millen and his Hyundai Veloster kind of limping away. So Steve Arpin with a problem in the hairpin brings out the red. Here's a look at just how intense the final of Red Bull Global Rallycross is. We'll be back to more from New York. You won't want to miss it. Back in New York for Red Bull Global Rallycross, and the fans, well, they'll go to any length to get a good view of what's happening. What's happening is another restart. We had the first one, the first main start. That brought out a red flag when Steve Arpin had his problems. This was the second start attempt.
The one guy who didn't want to see his lead go away, Sverre Isaksson, and trying to close off the inside, gets turned around, and from a big lead to on the slant bed rollback.
Yeah, he is out of the competition. Patrick Sandell was out after the first restart. It was supposed to be 10 laps. It's down to 6 now. They'll re-rack them, and we'll do it again and see if we can have a little bit of a cleaner start.
We've been talking about how important the start is, and this just underscores that no one is willing to give a millimeter on these starts, and they're barreling into that. You know, it's like a motocross start. It's like a big land rush down into that first corner.
Now, it's interesting as you look on board with Ken Block, with Sverre Isaksson being out, there's an open spot on the far left of the front row. Is that going to give Scott Speed a shot from second row?
Well, I guarantee you both Scott Speed and Steve Arpin are thinking the same thing. When those guys have to slow down, the front row, if they're side by side, you see these two guys on the right, the 7-up car and the Royal Purple car, and I hear the revs going up, so we must be getting close.
Looking for the lights, looking for the start, and here we go. Does Tanner Faust get a good one? He does, but can he get in front of PK Jr.? He does. Oh, and a big slide, but he stays under control, and he leads down into the apex up turn 2, but PK rubbing on the back bumper of that Volkswagen Polo of Tanner Faust, and Ken Block's in there as well. Contact in the hairpin.
Lots of it.
Guys, not playing nice by any stretch of the imagination. Tanner Faust in his Rockstar Volkswagen takes to that Joker lane on the first lap. Ken Block follows. So does Johnny Wieman. They'll come around. We've completed one lap. That's a good sign. Maybe things will settle down just a little bit. But it is Red Bull Global Rallycross. You never know. Things settling down. Now strategy comes in. It's a 6-lap run. You don't have to conserve quite as much. But you got to play your strategy on board with Ken Block.
So you're seeing the gap. Both these guys took the Joker on the first lap. So what Tanner Faust's got to do is got to just have head down and run as tidy as he can. And the final being shortened up, as we see here we have PK coming out of the Joker, gets that second spot away from Block.
And that's what that Joker will do for you. It'll give you 3 or 4 car lengths. PK played it perfectly and picked up a position over Ken Block. Now Block under heavy pressure from Johnny Wieman and his Red Bull Ford Fiesta.
Look how sideways PK was. You know, tires, we talked about, are going to be an issue for 10 laps. With those 2 aborted starts, we're seeing the race shortened up a little bit, but you drive like that for the whole time, you're going to have some issues. Wow, look at this. And Speed took the Joker. Now he's underneath. Ken Block does not get up next to him.
And this is huge. Scott Speed not having a good day. Damage to the front of his Polo right now, and he is pounding on the back bumper of Ken Block, and now he works his way past. Does he hold the position?
He doesn't.
Indeed, he does. Ken Block
almost spins it, pulls it out with that all-wheel drive.
He gets loosened up by Johnny Wieman right behind him, and all of this is allowing Tanner Faust to pull away. Is Faust going to get the monkey off of his back finally in 2014?
Almost up next to PK. This is the battle for the championship lead. Dead even coming into this final.
Tied up. You said it, Tommy, and this is somebody's going to walk out of here with a championship lead. Speed inside of PK gets the job done. Next on the list is teammate Tanner Faust.
PK said, I'm pretty sure we'll have the points lead coming out of here. He forgot to tell Scott Speed that.
Absolutely, he did. Speed with the position. You see the damage to the left front of the Volkswagen from Volkswagen Andretti Rallycross, but Tanner Faust out in front. Faust, who has missed 2 finals this year, has had a dismal season. Runs up front in New York looking for his first victory, and it sounds so strange to say.
2 corners to go.
2014 over the tabletop jump one more time.
You're going to see some real emotion if he can make it through this final corner and close this thing out.
Through the right-hand sweeper, Tanner Faust grabs another gear, looks for the line. Tanner Faust wins Volkswagen Rallycross, New York.
Volkswagen 1-2.
Big celebration for Tanner Faust. It will be an emotional win. He said earlier in the interviews, I don't just just want it, I need it. I need it. He needs it for the points, and he needs it for his self-confidence. He won, remember, in Finland. We talked about that in between the last round at Washington, D.C., and this puts him back in the hunt. For Tanner Faust, congratulations on his victory from here in New York. We'll be back to more Red Bull Global Rallycross. Red Bull Global Rallycross action from New York. Look at the front end of these cars. You don't think these victories are hard fought?
Heard the phrase, drive it like you stole it. These guys really did drive them like they stole it. I've never seen anything like it.
And I mean, just absolutely brutal the first couple of laps. And celebration for Tanner Faust. Why not? He's gotten the monkey off of his back. Takes his first victory of the season. And that is big when you look at how challenging the season has been for him so far. To win is such a relief. Tanner Faust, Scott Speed, Nelson Piquet, they cannot get separated. I mean, they're together in the points. They're together on the racetrack.
And I mean, that was just chaos. I'm exhausted. I haven't done anything except watch it.
And for Sverre Isaksson, such disappointment for him for sure. Let's hear from our winner with Kristen.
I'm here with a very excited Tanner Faust. You're coming back. You said you needed a win today. What made it a win out here?
Well, I got a good start. I mean, the final was really brutal. I was in the unlucky position of monkey in the middle, just sandwiched in 2 starts. It was absolute chaos. Can't believe this polo keeps running after all that, because that was brutal first 2 starts. But I'm just really excited. It's exactly what we have to do. Still a tight points championship between these 2 guys, but I'm just glad I could get in front of them this time. But the rest of the season, a lot of pressure to do well.
Well, like we said from the beginning, all about the start. Back to you guys in the booth. Congratulations, Tanner Faust.
Congratulations indeed. It's all about the points as well. Take a look at the Royal Purple points. Scott Speed, Nelson Piquet, only separated by 5 now.
And more than a little relief in Tanner Faust's voice, but look at that. That win doesn't even pull him in the top 5. That tells you how tough his season start has been.
5 seems like a lot after how close they were coming in here, that's for sure. But it's just going to continue. That's what makes Red Bull Global Rallycross so exciting indeed. Thanks for joining us from New York. Red Bull Global Rallycross next from beautiful Lake Tahoe. Celebrities from stage, screen, and sports compete at the American Century Championship. And don't forget, next stop for Red Bull Global Rallycross. Season continues Saturday 2 Eastern here on NBC from Charlotte. For Kristen Kinney, Tommy Kendall, I'm Brian Till, everyone at Red Bull Global Rallycross. Thanks for joining us, and congratulations to Tanner Faust. We'll see you next time. So long.